G'day everyone, so in this video I'm going to be making a pocket watch bow screw from that little piece of blue steel there. Now the job of this screw is to hold on the bow to the pendant and also pass through the button which is the one that I made in the previous video, which is used to open the latch on the case. The first thing I do is just tidy up the ends of this bit of blue steel that I selected, just to remove any burrs and make it a little bit easier to work with. Now because I'm going to be cutting a slot in the head and also a thread on the other end, I'm going to soften both ends by simply heating them up till they're red and then letting them cool down slowly, as opposed to quenching them or anything like that. I found the best way, please excuse my absolutely amazing contemporary art style drawing here. The best way to cut a slot freehand is, instead of using a point like this, which is what I first did, is you start off creating a point and then you flatten the end of it as small as possible. That way you can center the slotting file onto the piece of blue steel by eye and get it as centered as possible, or else, if you can imagine, you'll get a slot that's quite off center on the head of the screw, which will look kind of weird. So essentially that's what I've done here, and I'm using a slotting file, or a screw head file if you like, a very thin file to cut into it. So I'm doing a bit of tidying up of the I guess the chamfer on it and cutting into it. I do apologize that the recording's a little bit mainly fingers and fingernails. It's a little bit hard to get in there and get a good shot of this, but hopefully that you can kind of see how I'm approaching this in the lathe, which is really using two hands to cut into the screw head. Here I'm using a file to just remove any burrs and tidy it up and make it look as best as possible so I can continue working on it. At this point I'm going to basically define the length of the head. So I've made a little mark there with my vernier caliper, just to ensure that I don't make the head too thin when I'm making the rest of the screw thin. So I've just made a mark there to ensure that I know where the head will start and end, and that way I can continue on making the rest of the screw. So I've worked out what length I need for the screw. I did oversize this bit of metal a little bit, and now I'm just bringing it down to the length that I need. So now that I have the length that I need, I'm going to slowly start getting the overall diameter that I need for the screw. So I'm using a micrometer there. And I think from memory, the overall diameter of this section was about 7 mil. Sharpening the engraver there off camera. Come in and slowly just take material off. And the key with this is you want as little material poking out of the collet as possible, as close to the headstock. This ensures there's no flex on the metal, ensures that nothing catches and snaps off on the graver, which is why I'm essentially having a little bit of material poking out, and as you'll see, once I get the right diameter, I'll pull through a little bit more and continue making the whole rest of the screw, or the body of the screw, the same diameter. Now because the screw doesn't need, the center of it doesn't really need to have incredibly accurate tolerances, I'm just ensuring that the tip of it, where I'm going to cut a thread, is quite perfect, and basically just match the rest of it up. The cool thing about this method is basically you make sure the tip is the diameter you want, and you basically eyeball the rest of it. You just match it up and cut it till it's all the same diameter. Now to cut the thread I'm using what's called a screw plate. You can usually find these in old watchmakers lots and things, and I'm sorry I can't get you a better view. Again, it's a very small space to work in. But essentially, turned the lathe off and I've put the screw plate up against the little beveled section of the end of the screw, and by hand I've rotated it in, and it basically cuts the thread on its own as it's pulling itself into the piece of metal. So once I've done that, I'm just continuing on, like I said, eyeballing the rest of the screw, cutting the length, and as I said at the start, I'm trying to work as close to the collet or the headstock as possible, because if I were to right now start cutting at the end where the thread is made, there's a good chance that would catch onto the graver and just snap off. So work as close to the head as possible, and given that I had a little mark before knowing where the head of the screw ends or starts, I'll know where to stop. So here I'm just using the button that I made in the previous video and the bow, just to kind of ensure that the diameters that I've cut are more or less kind of fit and work right. And I think I had to make a modification to the hole in the button. And now I'm just using a very fine stone, one of the new, I think the fiber stones provided by Velorb, just to take off some of the burrs, make the head look a little bit nicer before I move on to actually finishing it off. So as you can see here, I've screwed it into the bow, through the button, onto the pendant, and I'm slowly screwing that into the other end of the bow, and it seems to be a pretty good fit. Now, depending on which ones you've seen, they do stick out a little bit. I think I did actually adjust the size of the head a little bit after this to make it a little bit smaller, but essentially they do stick out a little bit. They don't embed themselves into the bow. So for the next part, I'm going to use some binding wire, and I just create a little nest or a basket using some rounded nose pliers, and just wind it up until I create that rough shape, to create a little basket to keep the actual workpiece in. And that container there actually has half oil, just machining oil, and half water at the bottom of it. And this will be the method that I use for hardening it. So I drop the little screw that I made into that little nest or basket of binding wire, which should come into focus at some moment soon. Yep, that's it. And heat it up until it's red. Now, as opposed to the previous method where I let it cool down, we're going to get it red hot in this method to harden the material and quickly drop it into the oil and water mixture. You'll find there's a bit of scaling on it, so it's a little bit black, and I'll be addressing that to ensure it's, I guess, as polished as possible, but I'm not going to go to town on this particular one. So the super secret method for this is really just using a bit of pegwood and tissue with Autosol. This will polish it up as best as possible and get off any superficial, I guess, charring that it has from the hardening process. There it is in all its glory. Thanks for watching.